Hello, everyone. It's Mary Ann Pizzatola, president of the New York City Organization of Public Service Retirees. We are the organization that is currently in a lawsuit with the city, suing them over this Medicare Advantage plan that they are trying to compel us into. And one of the questions we were asked was, why now? What is the stabilization fund that everyone keeps talking about? And what about this $50 million a month that is costing the city because you guys are fighting this? And this is a constant question we are being asked by the active unions today. So I want to kind of give you a brief overview because we're not experts in this field by any stretch of the means, but we've had to try to understand what was happening and why it was happening. And we want to actually share that with you. So what is the stabilization fund? Well, the fund was invented, it was legislated in 1983. And it was to try to help equalize costs between the insurance plans. You had HIP and GHI, and when the rates are a little bit different, they needed a way to offset the cost. So HIP HMO rate is what the city rate is pegged to. That would say what the city has to pay for all employees, retirees, and their dependents. And if the rate is lower, so little here, actives, this is a plan that's for actives and non-Medicare retirees. And I go to explain if the HIP rate is higher than the GHI CBP rate, money will go from the city into the stabilization fund and to help keep the fund funded. If the comprehensive benefit plan GHI is higher than the HIP rate, then money has to be put into the fund to cover the premiums. Now remember that because I'm going to read you a memo from 2018 that talks about that. So, and then typically the city puts in about $30 or $35 million, and that was a figure that was negotiated through collective bargaining. Now, what is the stabilization fund for? And other than levelizing the premiums between HIP and GHI and the other plans, it is for actives and non-Medicare eligible retirees, and also for welfare funds. It pays for PICA too. PICA is your psychotropic, injectable cancer and asthma drugs. But remember, PICA is only for non-Medicare eligible retirees and actives, not Medicare eligible retirees, okay? Now, this is important because this whole situation affects a Medicare eligible retiree. And this becomes important to see what benefits you're entitled to as a Medicare person and which ones you're not. This fund primarily is not for a Medicare eligible retiree. It is for an active and a non-Medicare eligible retiree. And that's important because one of the things we keep saying that people keep smacking down is that this fund has been used for things to benefit raises for active employees. And the unions, when I say they, the unions or union activists keep saying, no, don't listen to them, it isn't true. It really is true. And that's exactly what happened. Is that this fund, the Health Insurance Stabilization Fund, has actually been used like a rainy day fund or slush fund. And it has to be, any withdrawal from this fund has to be agreed upon between the city and the unions. They just can't go take money out of it. But both parties are using this fund to plug budget gaps. And this becomes an issue because this wasn't the intent of this fund, okay? So the other thing to keep in mind is GHI, HIP, Emblem are now all one company. And so when you start to talk about the difference in rates, as we're going to in a moment, between GHI, HIP, and this new Medicare Advantage plan, you're going to start to scratch your head and kind of wonder, why are things happening the way that they're happening when this is all the same company? These are just different plans now within the same company. Before, they all used to be separate, not anymore. So one of the things that concerned us was Emblem Health and Blue Cross Blue Shield formed an alliance to create the Medicare Advantage plan. But guess what? In the new contract, the rate this year, well, for this fiscal year, should have been $7.50 a month for this plan. Keep that in mind, because their contract also states that in the following year, the rate would drop down to $0. Want to know how that happens? So do we. So this will be my first talk. Now, in 2014, this became an issue in the unions. There was MLC negotiations. They were trying again to use, renegotiate using the stabilization fund. Several unions voted no for it. Again, it got pushed through. The PBA abstained. The UFA said no way. That was Steve Cassidy at the time. Norman Seabrook, he's quoted as saying he felt hoodwinked into a deal that implied chiefly benefiting the UFT. The article goes on to continue to state, and I'll tell you where this was from. This was May 12th of 2014 from the chief leader. The unions will have help in meeting saving targets. The parties agreed to use $1 billion from the Stabilization Fund, a pot of money used since the 80s, to help stabilize rates between the city's healthcare plans. Some of those funds will go towards shoring up the union's welfare funds, which typically cover dental and optical benefits and especially costly drugs like chemotherapy medications and other injectables. If the targets aren't met, the prospect of members paying for portions of their own premium is still possible, though both the city and the unions have said that the option would be a last resort. If the unions saved more than they required, they could share up to $365 million of that windfall. Why would you share this? Why would you not keep this money knowing that costs are coming up, that they rise? We're now in a year where we have costs going up almost 8% inflation. So why would you not prepare for these futures, but you would take an overage out and use it as you needed or wanted then? So it says, but the teachers struck a deal. Some municipal union officials are setting a potentially damaging pattern for their members, especially in wages. Now, remember, that was the year that the UFT resolved their union contract and needed help plugging the budget in order to pay for it. May 6, 2014, Juan Gonzalez, New York Daily News, Gonzalez says city union leaders will fund raises by transferring $1 billion from the city health account. And they did. This article, effective July 1st, 2014, the Stabilization Fund shall convey $1 billion to the city of New York to be used to support wage increases and other economic items. There's one provision of the 3-page agreement. The rest of the agreement summarizes a commitment by the unions to achieve separate healthcare cost savings for the city of $3.4 billion over the next 4 years. So this fund now became a way to pay for raises, budget gaps, welfare funds, etc. Not just prepare for, health insurance stabilization. When de Blasio announced a tentative teachers contract last week, one that includes 18% in pay hikes over a 9-year period, he made clear that the city could only afford it if labor pacts and other labor pacts, if the municipal labor committee approved its health savings targets. Since then, aides have expressed confidence that they will reach the savings goals through reforms delivered in healthcare savings in this manner. So that's the next article. April 6th, 2015. This is also from the chief leader. City well on its way to $3.4 billion in savings, labor commissioner says. Who is that labor commissioner? Robert Lynn. Robert Lynn seems to have been the mastermind behind most of this. Some interesting quotes from this article. I know there's been tremendous interest in how we're going to find these savings, and many who said, oh, we'll never find the savings, and many who thought that this was smoke and mirrors. And I have to say, I think we demonstrated they were absolutely wrong. No, because this was 2015, it's now 2022, and look at where we are. How did all of a sudden you go to where you were saving $3.4 billion to being almost bankrupt? Good question, right? Under an agreement with the MLC, an umbrella group for the city unions, the then de Blasio administration was able to draw $1 billion from the Joint Health Insurance Stabilization Fund and is now contributing less into it. In 1984, the city began making payments into the fund, representing a differential in the HIP GHI rates. The money allowed employees to choose between the two plans without paying more. They wanted to give you choice. because they realized some people's needs were different than others and they couldn't stay in the same HIP plan. The money allowed employees to choose between the two plans without paying more, but HIP's costs against expectations rose substantially more than GHI's. An arbitrator will step in order to order adjustments in the saving if the savings aren't reached. But Mr. Lynn said any excess savings beyond the target of up to $365 million would return to workers as a bonus. And this is why we retirees keep saying that these savings are on our back, on the backs of a retired person. He added that the most of the goals have been achieved by collaborating with the unions, and this is a non-traditional approach to bargaining. He said, we have a mutual interest in finding ways to save dollars and make our workers healthier. For example, more than 1/3 of this year's cost reductions came from an agreement with the MLC, allowing the administration to redirect money for the mental health benefits that an arbitrator ruled last year was owed to the Stabilization Fund. So we're going to get $153 million out of that issue that the last administration sought to get, was unable to achieve, and we achieved through collective bargaining, Mr. Lynn said. Some of those savings arose from the actions of former Mayor Michael Bloomberg. His administration began an audit to make sure all dependents receiving benefits were actually eligible for them. And Mr. Lynn said the results allowed the city to change 14,000 family plans into individual coverage, saving $108 million. Other cost trimming resulted from a change in the funding structure with GHI, which covers 3/4 of the city workers, negotiating lower administrative fees with Empire Blue Cross and a lower senior care premium than expected. Senior care premium, which covers Medicare eligible retirees. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. Finance Committee Chair Julissa Ferrara said that her knowledge of the point was limited to the de Blasio administration 2-page agreement with the MLC and a 3-page OLR update last December. We don't want to have to bring you into a public hearing to get details when we see the savings moving forward, she said to Mr. Lynn, which she actually should have asked, hey, where is this all coming from? He said the administration was already on track to reach a $624 million savings expected for the next fiscal year, but couldn't yet detail more of the fertile ground being eyed. But understand the process is one where we talk with unions to identify that $76 million, and then we will announce that when we have them. Yes, indeed, we will have achieved the $700 million, he said. Okay. 2018, this is an IBO, Independent Budget Office testimony. We've talked about their October of 2021 testimony, but this one's important as well. I want to go back a little bit. While we applaud the collaborative efforts to find budgetary savings through increased efficiency and effectiveness in the city's provisions of healthcare, it is disappointing that the vast majority of savings realized to date have come in the forms of paper gains from lower than expected premium increases and other accounting maneuvers. These savings are intended to defray some of the cost of wage increases in the current round of collective bargaining. Here's another comment. A key feature of the prior agreement between the MLC and the city covering fiscal years 2015 through 2018 was a provision designating a portion of the excess savings above the agreed upon target of $3.4 billion for pensionable lump sum bonus payments to be proportionally distributed to the members of various city unions. Are you seeing a pattern? Because they're using this fund like a slush fund. Here's another comment. However, using surplus funds from these prior initiatives to reduce future employee savings avoids savings targets, avoids making changes that would actually alter the cost of delivering healthcare benefits to city workers and retirees. So it's not really a savings. It becomes a paper savings. It doesn't become a realized, actualized savings. Unlike the prior agreement, the new agreement between the MLC and the city does not include any provision for returning excess savings to the employees. Rather, the new agreement allows for the transfer of the first $68 million of recurring savings exceeding the $600 million target to fund $100 per member contribution by the city to the union's welfare funds. This is in addition to 2 100-member contributions the city will make to union welfare funds at the beginning of fiscal years 19 and 2020, using funds from the Health Insurance Stabilization Fund. The Health Insurance Stabilization Fund was established in fiscal year 1984 to provide a reserve that could be used to maintain the current level of health insurance benefits provided under GHI. The city's employer contribution for the cost of healthcare provision is equalized to the HIP premium rate, with the stabilization fund intended to cover the difference should GHI rates exceed those of HIP. And that's how I explain that here. The Health Insurance Stabilization Fund shields city employees from health insurance paycheck deductions in years when the relative cost of the city's major plans, HIP and GHI, reverse. Another very important comment. Since 2002, GHI's premiums have been lower than those of HIP. The difference between the HIP premium rate paid by the city and the lower GHI premium has been deposited annually in the city's Health Insurance Stabilization Fund. The city also required by terms of its collective bargaining agreements to make an annual contribution of $35 million. The city and organized labor must agree on any unplanned expenditures from the fund. The Stabilization Fund has become a steady source of reserve income for the city and has been used for both recurring and substantial one-time payments to the workforce in labor negotiations, exactly what we have been saying. The 2015-18 Health Savings Agreement withdrew $1 billion from the fund to defray the cost of wage increases, and also forgave a $148 million loan by the fund used by Mayor Bloomberg to satisfy the mental health parity requirement. The balance of the fund at the conclusion of fiscal year 2018 was $1.6 billion, after a $250 million expenditure in that year. This closes in saying, if the fund were to be depleted, the city and the unions would eventually have to face the difficult decision to either reduce employee benefits or increase employee contributions. Now, mind you, this was written in 2018, but what did the city do? Didn't pass the cost on to you employees. You took it out on the retirees. 2017, let me tell you how that happened again. In 2017, the HIP rate came in, and the HIP VIP Medicare Advantage plan, realized lower Medicare revenue than was planned. A Medicare Advantage plan is subsidized by Medicare, CMS, by the government, including this new plan they're trying to force us into. They're subsidized. That means the city doesn't pay for it, the federal government does. When the government reduces what is planned to be given to the insurer to pay for the plan, the insurer is still going to want their money. So hypothetically, let's just play with a number and say that the plan costs, that CMS, Medicare, is giving HIP $800. The plan cost is $900. Now what? Where do you get that extra $100 from? It's either coming from the city or it's coming from us. Well, what did the city agree to? Here is a letter from September 8th of 2016 from Emblem Health to Georgette Gesley, the Director of Employee Benefits for the City of New York, where she says, where they tell Ms. Gesley, with the 2017 CMS revenue reduction due to the EGWIP revenue, which is the employee group plan, EGWIP, revenue reduction, and the county rebasing projected resulting in a 7.9% revenue reduction. The City of New York VIP Medicare Advantage program benefits will reflect the following changes effective January 1 of 2017. Specialist office visit co-payments will increase to $25 from $15. Emergency room co-payments will increase to $75 from $50. Inpatient facility admission co-payments will increase to $100 from $0. Durable medical equipment coverage at a 20% co-insurance. Prescription drug coverage in the base plan will now be removed. No more prescription. Prescription drug coverage will only be offered through the optional rider at the existing cost sharing levels of $10, $15, $50, and 25% with an unlimited EGWP benefit design. Now, if that happens to a Medicare eligible in this new alliance plan, the New York City Medicare Advantage Plus plan, guess what's going to happen? The city, again, is either going to be tasked with paying for it or removing your care. They will reduce your benefit, increase your copay, increase your coinsurance, and pass it along to us, the retirees, who are on fixed incomes. This is what we've been telling you for months. They did it already. They did it already. They'll do it again, because now that plan is paid for by CMS. So what I wanted next to talk about, this is a great saying. I love Robert Wool, he's an actor. When the legend becomes a fact, print the legend. If you Google that, Robert Wool, it's called Assume the Position. It's like a 2-part HBO series years ago. It really has a few good laughs. So in it, he tells a story. And it's about this movie with Jimmy Stewart. And it's the man who shot Liberty Valance. And Jimmy Stewart is like the hero in here. He becomes famous for killing this bad guy, Jimmy Valance. Except it wasn't him that killed him. It was another actor. So he got famous for doing something that he didn't do. Here in the story, he says he's talking to a autobiographer, and he's telling him the story, and he goes, "Yeah, you know, I didn't kill Jimmy Valance, you know, but they said I did, and that's how I got famous for it." So the autobiographer rips up the notes, and he goes, "Well, when a legend becomes a fact, print the legend." So here's our legend. What is the legend? The legend are the numbers, because they're not real. Everyone keeps saying we're going to cost us $50 million a month if this doesn't happen. $600 million a year. The unions keep saying, I need the $600 million a year in order to fund the stabilization fund. Well, where are they getting that number? They're saying that there's 250,000 retirees. And they're saying that if you take those 250,000 retirees times $200 a month, and what's the $200 a month? They rounded up what they wanted to charge seniors for Medicare to stay in your GHI senior care, which is $191.57 a month. So rounding numbers up at $200 per person per month, 150,000 times $200 a month is $50 million. Times 12 months is $600 million a year. But you know the funny thing is, and I've been going over these numbers with our group, we took these off the OPEB reports from fiscal year ending 2021. So that was June 30th, 2021. They may have slightly changed between now and then, but when they were making these figures, it was based on these reports, okay? Because remember, the vote on this didn't happen until July of 2021, July 14th. So based on the OPEB reports, the numbers that we came up with was there's 171,016 Medicare eligible retirees times $191.57 is a $32 million, just over 30, almost $33 million in revenue. Now, that is every single Medicare eligible retirees in the city of New York on the OPEB report. And that's that. OPEB is it's post-employment benefits. That's what that stands for. If you only take senior care retirees, Medicare eligible, senior care Medicare eligible retirees, the number there equals $26,389,725, not $50 million. This number is saying every single Medicare eligible retirees plus whatever they estimated would be here in 2022 took this plan. The numbers aren't real. And And I'm trying to work with the city and trying to get these numbers updated, but it doesn't make absolutely any sense. It doesn't. So fiscal year 2021, it's other post-employment benefits. It was fiscal year ending June 30th, and that's where these other numbers come from. I also now in closing, want to go over the rates with you so you see what we're talking about. The HIP rates, we were trying to figure out where these numbers came from. And so we took the COBRA rates. From 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, right? 21, 22. I'm missing a couple, but 15, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. The HIP rates start at $636 a month. Senior care at the time, that pays the 20% that Medicare does not pay, right? So in a Medicare world, Medicare pays for the first 80%. The city's health plan, the one that we pay, or city pays, pays the last 20% of that doctor bill. Okay, so where your as an active insurance pays 100% of your bill, ours only pays 20%. Our costs are very low, and I'm going to show you that. So back in 2015, the senior care plan was $163.97. And it rose slightly. So if you go from 2015 until 2022, that rate was about $203, according to the city. And I still need to back this up, but these are COBRA rates, and this is 102% of the cost. So back out 2% in theory, and that's what your cost should be. Okay, so just say about $200 a month for a Medicare eligible retiree is what I cost the city. Okay. Active plans based on the HIP HMO rate started in 2015 at $636 and change, and then in 2020 was up to $877 a month. Okay, you see this little box here, this HIP VIP. This is a plan that came back online in 2021. Just showed up, back up, brought it back to life. The rate was $188.85 in 2021. You know what the rate is in 2022? COBRA rate, $7.65. Back out the 2%, it's $7.50. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We're at almost 8% inflation. Every other plan on these sheets is going up, but yet the HIP VIP plan drops from 100 and change to $7.50. Ironically, the Medicare Advantage plan, who half the partnership is HIP, GHI, Emblem Health, decided to make their plan in this year offering at $7.50, and next year $0. Tell me that's okay. That doesn't smell to you? We're still trying to figure that part out. $7.50. All these other plans going up, and this plan drops down to next to nothing. So with that, I'm going to leave you to think about all of those things. When someone says to you that it's the retirees that are costing the city money and it's causing our funds to go bankrupt, no. I've just laid out to you in multiple articles and city testimony that the Health Insurance Stabilization Fund, the Retiree Health Trust Fund, all of these funds have been used like slush funds. We didn't do that. We're retired. We don't have a collective bargaining agreement to negotiate. We are retired. The benefits that we retired with, we're supposed to keep. I'm begging you to look into this. Unions should never be renegotiating or taking away a retiree's benefit, because one day you will be retired. And I know they keep saying that the Medicare Advantage plan is the same as senior care, it's the same as Medicare, but it's not. And we've done a lot of videos on that, and more are coming. But this is important because this is how we got here, and we didn't do that to you. Okay. I hope that you take the time to look into some of this, and if you have questions, to reach out to us, because we'd be very happy to help you understand it. The Health Insurance Stabilization Fund should never have been used the way it's been used. It should have been there to protect you, especially that the fund, that stabilization fund, does help pay for non-Medicare eligibles. So thank you for your time. I hope that answers some of your questions, and have a great night, and we'll be back again.